Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching third and final part of What If Naruto Became a Supreme Being. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
At the great tomb of Nazarick, Ainz was feeling very sad. First, he got his family back, including his grandfather figure, who is just like his real grandfather except that they are not related by blood. When they got to the tomb, he told them everything, including what he knew about the villages from his time as Ainz. Hiruzen and his parents were sad about what happened to him and ashamed of how their families were acting at this point. Hiruzen wished that someone in his family could trust him, but it looked like that wasn't the case. The other Kages were torn about what happened to their dream and how it wasn't at all what they had hoped it would be. They realized that their words had been misunderstood and that the village was now looking for the person who was number one instead of the person who would lead the next generation. Another thing that was talked about was Kage. She was a goddess with a lot of power and control, and everyone feared her. She was glad to be alive again after being stuck in that crystal for so long and only being able to talk to Mito. She made it clear that she wanted to return the chakra to the tree as it had been before, but he would only let her do this for the first people who had crossed him and were not good enough to die. Kage agreed to this deal and became his goddess and the head of his branch for chakra research and study. She was also on the same level as some of the floor guardians, which earned her their respect. Even the fact that she wasn't really a person anymore helped them. The tomb also gave the parents of their lord a warm welcome. They were treated as honored guests and given the best accommodations possible. The other people were treated the same way, but Hiruzen was treated the best because he was like their lord's grandfather. For them, the tomb was meant to be a place to welcome friends and allies and to punish people who tried to break into their home. Which is ironic, because Nabarugama had just told them that a group of mercenaries, including a Konoha shinobi team and a couple of root teams, were infiltrating his home at this very moment. The team was made up of his old followers Konohamaru and Ebisu, who was both a friend and a teacher. Hanabi Hyuga was there, too, with her own team of 3 Hyuga clan branch members. Most of the time, people wouldn't be able to get to the tomb on their own, but Ainz let them come to the island at this time before closing it again. How did he get this done? He gave Konoha false information that made it look like it came from Jiraiya's spies and that they were talking about a place where Ainz might be hiding. It was said to have wealth from another world and powerful artifacts that could beat even the Great Biju. When they heard this, their greed got the best of them, so they sent the teams and hired a group of mercenaries to help. If he had to guess, he would say that these people were used as cannon fodder. Ainz was in his throne room, with his allies standing next to him and his family and other allies there as well. It looks like our guests are getting ready to move in. Yes, Lord Ainz, how do you want to move forward? Ainz thought about it and then turned to Hiruzen. Grandfather, would you like to make sure your grandson's team gets to us so you can talk to him? Hiruzen hesitated for a moment but then decided, yes. Yes, I want to talk to him and see if I can still change him. If I can't, it will be because of his pride that he dies. Ainz walked up to him and gave him a pat on the shoulder. Don't worry. Even if he dies, I won't make you watch if you don't want to. Thank you, Naruto. When there were no enemies around, only he and his parents could call him by his real name. Now, he said, looking at the screen, Pleiades, I want you to take care of any mercenary crews you might run into. If any of them are still alive, bring them to the torture and experiment chamber. Is that clear? Alpha bowed her head to him. Of course, our lord, what do you want us to do? Don't hold back. There's no reason for you girls to, but try not to wreck the room if you can help it. The Pleiades said, understood, our lord. They left the room, leaving him alone to figure out who the root shinobi team would fight and how to get Konohamaru and his team to his site. Demiurge, do you know anyone the root team might be interested in? The demon smiled. I think this would be a great time to let our friend play. Ainz knew who he was talking about, since they were one of his allies in the Great War, and it would be good to give them the freedom they wanted. Okay, tell them to go to the chamber they arrive in. I want them to kill some of them, but not all of them, so they have someone to torture and break in their free time. Of course, my lord, your will be done. Naruto looked at Konohamaru and sighed as he went off to prepare. I'm afraid of the old man's heart, but this is what needs to be done, Hashirama told Hashirama and the others. How do you feel about what's going to happen? Tobirama was the first to respond. They knew they were taking a risk by coming into the realm of someone who might be here, and that is their fault. If they die or are captured and tortured, that is their fault and no one else's, Mito said. Hashirama nodded his head in agreement. I don't like doing this to children we knew or got to see grow up, but I understand why it's happening and I'll support you, Great One. Kage snorted, I know why it's happening, but I don't like it. I don't care about them at all. They're just bugs that don't belong in this world anymore. You know what we believe, son, and even when things are bad, we'll be there for you. Everyone else left the room except Albedo, who wondered what her lord wanted to ask her. Oh, Lord. Albedo, I want you to answer honestly and not based on anything else. Do you love me? The succubus, which I didn't know she was surprised by the question but answered, yes. Of course, my lord, you and the other guardians are my world. No, that's not what I want. Then what, Lord? If you didn't have to follow the rules, do you love me enough that you would spend all of time with me? She smiled brightly. Of course, my lord, I would spend all of eternity with you, even if I could never have your child. I see, he said as he got up from his throne and changed back to his human form. Then he put his hand on her face. I can't tell you how happy this makes me. Since I got my new body, things have changed for me, and next to Anko, you are the most important woman in my life. I want you to know that I love you back. The woman, who thought this was a terrible dream, had tears running down her face. Please, my lord, tell me this is real and not just another cruel dream, she begged. He smiled and kissed her, which left her shocked. This is not a dream, my love. You are one of the most important things in my life, and I promise I will never lose you to anyone else. She smiled and kissed him back. Me too, my lord. My soul belongs to you and you alone. Then think of this as our wedding. We are now husband and wife, but know that even though that might be true, I loved Anko the longest. Of course, she is the main wife of your human brides, but I am the main wife of your inhuman brides. He smiled. That's a little strange, but we can figure out the details later. Shall we watch the slaughter now? She smiled and stood next to his throne, but he pulled her to him and put her on his lap, which made her blush. She smiled, wrapped her arms around his neck, and put him in the crook of her neck. Today was the best day of her life, and she would never forget it as long as that damned vampire lived. Floor 1. After getting separated from the rest of the group, a group of armored mercenaries were walking around the halls. Some of the shinobi teams went in different directions while others waited outside or went to different levels of the tomb. It was huge, and they could already tell from what they found in some of the smaller buildings nearby that there was a lot of wealth all over the land. If they only took those, they wouldn't care about any of the other treasures in the tomb. But they had to find out if this Lord Ainz was real and, if he was, see if they could make money from his death. But when they went into a big room, they saw a group of maids standing there with creepy smiles or blank looks on their faces. Alpha smiled, who are you? We are the Pleiades, servants of the greatest lord in the land, the one who stands on top of all mountains. Today is not your day, humans, for your death has been promised by our lord. But since we don't want to disappoint him, we decided to make a game of it. We will take turns killing some of you at a time. In exchange, you can attack as a group at one person or attack all of us. The group didn't listen any longer and in a matter of seconds, the women attacked the group, and each one went after the person in front of her. Alpha was punching them hard enough to send them flying backwards and even break their bones with what she would call weak blows. Beta was using her scepter Morningstar staff to stab some of the people coming at her while she clawed the others. CZ was holding a rifle and started firing magical bullets at her enemies easily, making sure that some of them didn't die. If they weren't careful, they were going to bleed to death, but most of them would live long enough to wish they hadn't. But she could use her speed to get behind her enemies and stab them with the knife she was holding. When they hit her, she just went back to her normal self. Before she smiled and kept attacking them and trying to break them mentally, she sucked their weapons into her slime. Intoma, on the other hand, was keeping some of her talismans in place or using them to attack with elements. Some bugs even helped her, and she used them to kill some of the men there and get them ready for when she was hungry. In less than 10 minutes, they killed or hurt everyone in the room. For them, this showed a lot of control, since they usually just killed the person in the tomb. Well, they were bad, even worse than those adventurers who attacked the tomb, don't you remember? Yes. Very weak. CZ looked at the ones she shot and saw that they were all still alive, which meant that she needed more test subjects. Most of them lived because of me. Good, I guess that means I can write a report while we get rid of the dead ones. If it's okay, I'd like to torture and eat a few of them, he said. The solution was to smirk down at the living ones with a dark, twisted smile that scared the crap out of them and made them wish they were dead with their friends. "No, we need to bring them in to torture them," she said with a smile. "If I'm right, some of them will be free afterward, so if you want, you can take them or join us." Intoma was drooling under her mask as she said, "Excellent. Can I?" Sigh, "Well, it would be better to see them put to some use, so feel free to eat them. Our Lord doesn't need the bodies of these weaklings." "Yeah." She told her bugs to gather up the bodies and pull them away so she could eat them in peace. Alpha groaned. "Well, they should feed her until later," she said, putting her hand to her ear. "My lord, it's over here." "Good, I watched the whole thing and I'm happy with how you did." "My lord, you are too kind." "That's not true, and Solution can have at least 3 of those men for her own time. Just make sure the leader and some of the stronger ones come to the torture room, is that clear?" "Yes." She took her hand off her ear and said, "Solution, change of plans. You can have the 4 closest to you while we take the rest." She smiled at the men who were barely breathing and said, "Death is too good for scum like you fools, so enjoy. Other crew for hire, outside." They had to run to stay alive. Several dead warriors in armor had been found on the grounds. They tried to fight them off for a while, but their weapons were enchanted and the ground was enchanted, so it didn't work. I didn't find anything special about their deaths, other than the fact that some of them were fried and others were stabbed because they forgot there was someone behind them. In the end, their deaths didn't mean anything, though. Team Root. The group was moving through the ruins, and their only goal was to find this great Ainz and kill him if he was there. From there, his body would be brought back to be used in experiments, along with anyone else who could help make Danzo's Konoha stronger. Even though he and Tsunade agree on some things and he has more freedom, he still thought of her as a weak woman who shouldn't be in charge at this time. Also, he has always wanted to be Kage, which is another thing to think about. His ego won't let him be second to anyone in the world. When they walked into a big open space, they didn't expect to find anything there. It was a blonde woman wearing a black crown and a black dress that showed off her body. She wore dark heels, and even though her eyes were blue, they were filled with darkness. A red sword with thorns on it was in her hand. It was a sign of power and destruction. When she smiled, it sent shivers down their spines. They thought she was a monster with human skin, but they kept their nerve. "Who are you, and why do you hate Konoha?" she asked with a small laugh. Then she licked her sword, which made it turn red. "Oppose Konoha? No, I oppose anyone who gets in the way of my time with my sweet climb. You are doing this, so I oppose you. My lord told me to deal with you, and by etiquette, I will do so without a second thought. Please scream for me, it will make this more fun." This was the 3rd daughter of the king of the old kingdom of Re-Estais. She was a princess. She worked for Ainz for a while because he promised not to hurt her beloved climb and give her power from another world in exchange. By doing this, she turned against her family and burned down the kingdom that was once there. From there, she made a promise to Climb that she would always be by his side, and he eventually became her husband. She started to care more about him as a person and because he loved her, and soon they had a child together. After what Ainz did to his friend and mentor Gasaf, Climb was still sometimes reluctant to side with Ainz, but the princess was the one who mostly dealt with him. From there, he guarded the tomb for as long as it was needed, with the help of the princess. The Root ran at her and, without warning, pulled out their swords and swung them at her at once to kill her. The attack didn't work, though, because the waves made by her sword swings sent them flying backward. From there, she ran at them with blinding speed and stabbed one of the shinobi through the heart. He fell to the ground and held his chest in pain as she started avoiding the jutsu that were being fired at her. "Are you okay, Commander?" he asked. When he looked at his boss, he saw that his veins were bulging from the inside out and that he was yelling in pain. Soon, he blew up into a pile of blood that scared the other shinobi there. "Oh, it looks like I didn't hold back enough. I guess I wanted him to suffer more. Well, you know what they say, practice makes perfect." She held her sword at her side and said, "It looks like I didn't hold back enough." Ability boost. She ran at them again, but most of them were able to get out of her way. However, she cut one on the arm, which made him fight back. She tried to block the blow, but it hit her in the back of the head. When she fell to the ground, the shinobi thought they had won. "Quick, grab the sword. Lord Danzo might need it." But the shinobi who was cut fell to the ground because a hole opened up in his head. The rest of the group was shocked by this turn of events, and the person who stabbed her soon lost both of his legs in one clean cut. He cried out in pain and begged for someone to help him. The other saw her get up, and the short sword fell out of her head and landed on the ground. Her head looked fine. Like it? Blood Rose is a special sword that puts the damage I take on someone else, but if I hit them in vital spots, I can inject them with vines that grow all over their body, she said, looking at the man on the ground trying to get away. She smiled again, but this time it was darker. I should also say that unless I want to kill you, you won't die from any wound, but you will feel pain forever without dying. Quick, grab him, and let's go, she said with a smile. Who told you could go? She cut off the head of another root, leaving only one alive and two standing there with a feeling they'd never had before. Fear. The two decided to give up and try to get away, but the princess cut them along their spines. From there, the attack made them fall to the ground with a thud and scream in pain. She smiled as she put her sword away. Now then, let's have some fun, shall we? She pulled another weapon out of a pouch, and it turned into a thorny whip. She swung it at one of them, making him wriggle in pain before he felt blood coming out of his eyes. Then he did the same thing to the one on the ground, but he added some lightning magic to it, which made the pain feel even worse. This is going to be so much fun. When I'm done, I'll take everything I can from your weak mind and give it to my lord. Then I'll go be with my daughter and husband, you idiots. With a chilling laugh, she let the roots know they were not going to get out of this darkness. Team Ebisu. They didn't know what was going on. 1 minute, they were going deeper into the pit, and the next, they were walking down a hallway to a place they didn't know. When they came out of the tunnel, it was night and they were in the Colosseum. Don't lose your mind, you good grandson. Sure thing, sensei. The team went down to the ground level, where they saw a figure in a cloak holding a staff. Ebisu walked up to the man slowly and demanded. What's your name, sir? Sometimes I wish I had never let you teach Konohamaru or bother Naruto. Those are my biggest mistakes in life. When he took off his hood, Konohamaru was crying, Udon and Moegi were shocked, and Ebisu couldn't believe what he was hearing. He sighed, Lord Third? For Hiruzen to be known as one of the Hokages now is nothing but shameful. I would never want to bring shame to my name by taking the title after what my students and old friends have done, he said as he looked at his grandson. On the one hand, it was his grandson, the child he had watched grow up right in front of his eyes, saying that he would take his place. But now he saw that he was one of the blind followers who blamed Naruto for everything bad that had happened to him and his family. He knew that his son Asuma was to blame, and if that was the case, he wished he had never let the man near the child. Is that really you, Grandpa? Yes, it's Konohamaru, but I don't know what to think about seeing you again. Why? What for? The boy glared at him and asked, why did you turn your back on Naruto? Why did you betray the boss, as you called him? Because it was all part of the plan. Asuma and Ebisu wanted me to pretend to be his friend to keep him loyal to the village. We were to look up to him and then betray him when the time was right so he would die of heartbreak. From there, we would get special training from the village and earn the favor to one day reach my goal of becoming Hokage. Hiruzen couldn't believe it. His grandson had been like this since the first day he met him, and he had also tricked him? He pointed at Ebisu, who looked proud, and asked, who told you to do this? Sensei and Uncle Asuma did it, Hiruzen said. He took a puff from his pipe and then slammed his hand on the ground without warning. He called for Enma. Hiruzen, you're still alive. I was surprised to see your name on the scroll again, but it's good to see you, old friend. What do you need? He asked his oldest friend. Did Konohamaru agree to the terms? Yes, he did, and we thought it was your last wish, he said with a sigh before blowing up the smoke. Then I want you to take him and my son off the contract, he said. The Ape King was shocked. He looked at the child and asked, may I ask why? He betrayed me and everything I stood for when I was Hokage. He is not worthy of being my grandson, the summoner, or a Sarutobi in general. The Ape King was shocked, and Konohamaru couldn't believe what he was hearing. His own grandfather kicked him out of the family because he wanted to kill the demon and help himself become Hokage. For that monster that killed everyone over time? That fool and loser? It wasn't right. Enma asked, what did he do? Hiruzen soon told her everything that had happened and what he had done to Naruto, a boy he loved more than his own blood. He looked at his partner and his grandson and nodded his head. Then he crossed his name off the contract and left. Hiruzen looked away from his grandson and began to walk away. Traitor, where do you think you're going? Your future Hokage is calling you. Get out of here. I'm ashamed that you're of my blood, and I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. I'll let him deal with you instead, so I don't have to watch your life leave your eyes. Suddenly, he was standing on the highest point in the arena and going through a tunnel on the other side. Aura came out of the shadows with a microphone in her hand. Ladies and gentlemen, monsters and demons, we have a special event for you today. In this corner, some stupid humans have dared to come into our home. He was insulting them, so Konohamaru was growling at him while the others were getting their weapons ready. Moegi with her kunai and shuriken, Konohamaru with his staff, Ebisu with his windmill shuriken, and Udon with the seals he had drawn earlier. In this corner with his corner girl Albedo, the one, the only, the ruler of Naruto in this world, the king of the dead, Ainz Gaon. Ainz was standing there in his skeleton form and was wearing a fancy cloak. So, I haven't seen your faces in a while, you traitors. What the hell are you talking about, skeleton demon? We've never met you before. When he looked at Moegi, his eyes lit up, which scared her. But he took off his cloak, showing that he was just a skeleton with black trousers on his legs and no hands. He changed out of his skeleton form and back into his human form, but this time he gave himself blonde hair and whisker marks on his face. If you want to be Hokage, you have to beat me, he said with a smile that made everyone in the group nervous. But you can't have died. He said with a fierce grin. His whisker marks were gone and his hair was back to its normal color. I did die, but my death gave me a reward. I became a god. No, I'm better than a god, I'm the highest order in this world and other worlds. Not surprising since I've already conquered 2 worlds and now I'm on my 3rd world until the next conquest. Don't worry, students. He was weak before, and he is weak now. If we all work together, we can beat him and his army. Naruto grinned. Good, come here so I can show you despair. Don't get in my way, this is my battle, and I'm out for revenge. Albedo and Aura stepped back and watched the action up close. Konohamaru did some hand signs and shot a fireball at him. Ebisu threw his windmill shuriken at him and then fired 3 fireballs of his own. Ainz quickly moved away from the windmill and took the fireballs. Moegi threw a kunai at him, but it hit the ground instead of him. Is that it? They asked, smiling. Now, Udon. Soon, the area around him got a little heavier, not a lot, but enough for him to feel the change. Seals for gravity? They gathered their chakra and fired fireballs, water strikes, and lightning strikes at him. He said, yeah, demon, and they will be your end. When he ran into him, there was a huge explosion. Out of the fog, they could see that he was standing there, unharmed, and just brushing dust off his shorts. There's no way he's moving all the time. Does that mean the seals are broken? He smiled. Oh, they're working, but they're not doing what you wanted them to do, Naruto said. To solve the problem, he stomped on the ground and broke the seals. This made the group a little worried because that was the best tool they had so far, and now that it was gone, they didn't know what to do. Ebisu, frustrated, said. Everyone get out of here, I'll take care of this. Send word to Konoha so they can rally the nations against this monster and wipe him and his kind out of this world. The team hesitated for a second, but Moegi took off first, leaping out of the arena and heading further away. Naruto was happy. Shaltir, be a good boy and deal with her. Break her first, and then you can eat her. There's no point in letting it go to waste, you know? The vampire smiled. She jumped after Moegi to play with her and said, of course it will be done, my lord. Udon and Ebisu stayed behind to fight Naruto, while Konohamaru went after her. They tried to hurry him, but he said quickly. Almighty push. Both of them were thrown into the wall, breaking Ebisu's back and hurting Udon. Udon run. The boy looked at his sensei and then at the monster, whose dark aura he could feel, before running back the way they had come. Naruto gave a wild smile. That's so sweet, I want to puke. He turned to the rafter and said. He turned to the teacher and said, I'm excited to see what I can do with you now. It doesn't matter what you do to me, because the world will rise up against you and destroy you like the Kyuubi. Naruto laughed. Well, the world will know about the Kyuubis soon. You see, my father has the other half of the demon inside of him, so he can bring me the other half soon. Soon, he will be the one who has both halves of the Kyuubi, and they will give him the power to become one of the strongest shinobi in the world. Naruto laughed at the fear on his face, and Ebisu reached for the Hokage, who was trembling. Please, Lord Fourth, help me kill this monster. He became very angry. He told the man, that's my son, you fool, and I can't wait to see what happens to you scum. Then he turned away, ending the man's last chance of being saved. Well, then, that's enough of you, he said. He put him to sleep with a simple spell and then turned to Albedo and said, I think we can use him, but I'm not sure what to do with him exactly. We already have enough people to torture and test on. I have an idea, my lord, she said with a dark smile and a whisper. She bowed to him and pulled the poor fool away from his fate, which I would say was death, but it wasn't. In the end, he will wish for death more than anything else. Naruto got the other Goridans together and put up 2 screens in front of them. Let's see how our pests are getting along as they try to escape. Moegi and Konohamaru. Moegi was resting on a nearby tree in a forest, where Konohamaru was able to find her. She was crying, and he quickly gave her a big hug. Don't worry, Moegi, we'll get out of this place. I'm scared, Konohamaru. What if they find us here? He smiled at her and kissed her. When we leave here, we can finally get married like we promised, she said with a smile. I'd love that, Kono-kun. I'm not sure where Hanabi is right now, but she should be in the tomb. She's probably dead like the rest of them, but let's move on already. Oh my, you're going to keep running now? They both looked up and saw a pair of dark red eyes looking down from a tree. So, are you out of hiding now? She asked with a smile. She smiled and asked, how did you find us? Oh, I was already here. I was just waiting for you to finish saying goodbye, she said as she gracefully fell to the ground and walked slowly towards them. When Konohamaru realized that Moegi needed time, he said. Moegi, get away. I'll catch up with you when I'm done fighting this monster. But Konohamaru-kun. Don't argue, just go. She cried a little, then turned and ran. He smiled and said, you'd better come back. I can't lose this fight no matter what. Shaltir was bored as he watched. Soon, they were going to make her so bored that she would cry. She told her brides to come to her side and hide in the shadows. The girl ran, and the boy quickly took his staff out of his cloak and spun it around. So, are you ready, brat? He hissed. Ready to kill you. He ran at her and thrust the staff at her head, but she stopped it with her pinky finger. Then he kept swinging at her head and poking her in the stomach. But her pinky finger stopped every hit, and he moved away from her. He then made a few hand gestures before shouting. Fire style. Fireball jutsu. Shaltir sighed and moved out of the way of the attack that came from above him. She floated there and saw that he was tired from fighting earlier and now fighting with her. When she snapped her fingers, her brides came out from behind the trees and attacked him. He tried to fight them off with his taijutsu, which is what she was told it was called, but the brides beat him. When they were about to cut off his head, she said. Stop. I need him to stay alive for a little longer so he can see what's going to happen, she said with a smile as she floated into the air with the brides holding the boy back. He fought even though his face was swollen, he was missing a few teeth, he was bleeding all over, and his leg was broken. As they flew through the sky, they could see that Moegi had not gone very far but was getting close to the barrier. She ran into the wall and hit it while yelling. What the hell? They put up some kind of barrier around here. Shaltir floated down behind her and laughed, making her turn around in shock and fear. She knew that this meant she had killed Konohamaru, so she let out 2 kunai before her eyes filled with tears. It's a wall, actually. You're on the 6th floor of the tomb. You mean someone actually made this? No shinobi could make something like this. It's a good thing the supreme beings aren't your weak shinobi, said Moegi as he ran quickly towards Shaltir, who was laughing, hoping to pierce her heart. But unfortunately, the daggers broke without warning, and he grabbed her. Oh, it's cute how hard you're trying, but that's not what's going to happen anymore, so let me show you your end. When she turned to look at her little lover, she saw that the brides were forcing him to watch what was about to happen. My lord wanted you to lose completely, and that's what's going to happen now. After all, what could be better than knowing that you and your lover will never have a happy ending? Once I eat you, your soul will be mine, and you'll never see the afterlife. She grew her fangs and bit the boy's neck, ignoring his screams of pain. Seeing his lover die until all that was left was skin and bones. She dropped the body and had her demon bats take it away so it could be used for all the parts that were left. She smiled at the boy and said, "I've got a better punishment for you," he said. Brides. At least 20 of them showed up and gathered around the boy. He was scared because he didn't know what was going to happen to him. She told the vampire brides, "Tear him to pieces and eat everything he has." She walked away as the boy screamed about being torn to pieces and having everything he owned eaten by the vampire brides. Udon. He was running through many halls, afraid of what might happen. He knew that his friends and teacher were probably dead, and that he needed to find a way out and have hope for the future. All he could hear was the shambling of the dead running through the halls. Most people found them scary, to say the least, and he wanted to find a safe place for his own kind. Udon. When he looked up, Hanabi was standing there wearing her kunoichi clothes, which were a brown tight top and a short skirt. She sighed and asked, "Hanabi, where are the others? One of the monsters in this tomb killed my guards, but I was able to get away. I think the others are either dead or have been caught, so we need to get out of here. I know Konohamaru and the others are dead, but I'm the only one left. Please tell me you know how to get out of here," she said with a smile. "Yeah, I found it this way while I was walking through the halls and killing some of the skeleton monsters that were running around," she said. Udon ran in the direction she pointed, and she followed him. When they got to a door, she told him, "Come in. This is some kind of teleportation seal that will take us back to the surface." He went in and stepped on the seal. But before he could react, he was gone, leaving Hanabi, who smiled cruelly and said, "Konoha filth, you deserve your crime for going against Lord Ainz." Udon was in some kind of room, and he was standing on a mound that he didn't know what it was. He looked around and saw a huge cockroach monster with a crown on its head and a scepter in its hand. "Hello, dinner." Udon screamed as the bugs swarmed over him and started ripping his skin off. Hanabi was walking through the halls when he saw Demiurge. "Everything went as planned, huh?" "Yes, he took my advice and believed the lie. I think he was so scared by everything he saw today that he was willing to do anything to get out. I need to know how you heard about Lord Ainz. Your friend Narbaril told me. She was a maid at our house and asked me if I wanted to leave. I told her I did and wanted to stop being human at this point. It makes me sick that I'm related to trash who would turn on each other to keep some sacred bloodline shit." "Oh, I see. Well, lucky for you, I have a plan. I must warn you, though, that it will be a long and painful process, but it will make you a demon of demons. Also, from now on, you will work for me. That's fine with me as long as I can break up the Hyuga clan with that man and the elders." Hanabi Hyuga, the youngest daughter of Hiyashi Hyuga, said, "Of course. Since her sister betrayed Naruto and became the heiress, everyone has been waiting for the day when she would be sold to a rich noble and forced to marry him. But only after an assurance seal was put on her forehead. This mission, Narbaril knew she was going on it and told her what was waiting for her in the tomb. She also let her know that she had been able to get her a place in their ranks. So, when she and her guards went into the tomb, they found some of the living dead there, and she told her servants to attack them. She opened the seal on her forehead without them knowing, making them easy prey for the monsters. From there, she was taken to Albedo and Demiurge, where they told her what they could do for her and how much it would cost. She was supposed to turn into a demon with the eyes and powers of her clan and then use them as a tool for the tomb. Small price to pay to be free and stop thinking about killing. Naruto watched everything from the throne room with Albedo by his side. He also let Shaltier sit on his lap and get some love and care. After he told them both how he felt and reminded them of their places, they both agreed that they had to share. Because of this, they got along much better than before and didn't fight as much. Even though they were still competitive with each other, it wasn't too bad. At this point, Naruto was interested in how everything else was going. Time skip. Naruto was in charge of the week's paperwork. In his recent victories, luck has been on his side. He heard from Blue Rose that they had been able to get the big Nadeshiko village to join their side and that their queen had come here to fight him for the right to marry him. From that point on, she fought him with everything she had. Eventually, he won, but she agreed to become one of his many brides. From there, she was put under Anko's command and made a subordinate while Iwa was there to sign a treaty. There, they agreed to his terms, taking control of the country by getting rid of their so-called Deyamo. Kokaitis finally got the sword back, but not before he talked about the problems he ran into on the way. First, a boy made of water fought him for the sword, but he killed the boy because he was trying to bring shame to the mask and sword. Next, he met a girl with red hair named Karen Uzumaki and asked her to go with him to the tomb to meet one of her relatives. She also had Tayuya, who turned out to be an Uzumaki and wanted to get away from the shinobi, especially Orochimaru, who were after her. He thought she faked her death before she moved out on her own, but she was soon caught, and now everyone was after him. Naruto saw that Kiri was not on their side and needed to be persuaded. He also heard about a priestess from the demon country and some kind of blood prison. He was told that both of them had powerful parts, but he didn't know what to do with them. So, to answer this question, he told them that they were going to find these powerful weapons or people and bring them to his side or get rid of the problem. He'd send the Pleiades to jail and send Sebas and Shaltir to demon country with the demons. Orochimaru, he finally had a real problem. He had been having trouble with the snake because he was always looking for him. So, he told Demiurge to kill the fool in any way possible and not waste his resources. The demon was happy to do this and bring his new employee out into the pitch to test her. Now all he had to do was wait and see how things turned out. Until the reports came in or they came back, he put his papers away and smiled. At this point, he had something to deal with. When he walked into his room and saw who was on his bed, he smiled. Anko was naked under the sheets, showing off her big breasts, and Albedo was next to her with her wings over her to protect her modesty. Naruto licked his lips and looked at the other women on his bed. All of them were there: Kagaya, Karen, Tayuya, Beta, Samui, Yugito, Karui, who was given to him, Alpha, and Solution. He smirked. Time to conquer, they laughed, and then they slammed the doors shut so that anyone who came in would only hear grunts, moans, and screams of pleasure. Naruto was relaxing in his room after having about 16 different women, which could be called the best way to lose your virginity. Even though most of them were animals in their own right, most of them were only there to help the other women in some cases. But overall, they are all sleeping well and dreaming about what the future will bring for them. Naruto was putting on his robes and changing into his skeleton form so he could talk to Demiurge and hide the fact that his face was red. This also helps because, in his undead form, most of his hot flashes go away right away. Demiurge, what news do you have for us today? Quite simply, my lord, that girl's transformation went exactly as planned earlier, and she's looking forward to her next job after killing that snake Orochimaru for you. Oh, I see. Are you sure you killed him? After all, he was known as the most elusive shinobi of his time because he had so many close calls with death and kept getting away. Of course, don't worry. We took care of him, his partner Kabuto, and anyone else who was at the base at the time. I'm guessing Albedo and the others won't be joining us for a while after your attempts to make some heirs? Naruto stumbled for a moment but got back on his feet. Yes, they are taking it easy, but now is not the time to think about that. There are still threats in the land, and we have more important things to do. Of course, Sebas has dealt with the demon country, and the priestess is willing to join us if we're willing to give her a child to take over for her in the future. This means, I'm afraid, that you'll have to have a child with her in the future, as Sebas has told her about your status and power, which interests her. Demiurge pushed his glasses up and said, I see. Well, we'll find out more about how soon that needs to be done, but for now I need to know about the other countries and the enemies we still have. Yes, the Akatsuki are a threat to us right now, but I'm sure that if I really try, I can wipe them out in a few minutes or at most a few days. Check to see if you can find Itachi Uchiha and the leader who is also Uchiha. I want to see the face of the man who hurt me as a human before I tear him apart with my own hands. But of course, my lord, anyone who tries to hurt you or your parents will pay with their souls. We also heard that the so-called second leader is a man named Nagato Uzumaki, who is said to use the powerful Rinnegan, which isn't as good as your eyes. Oh, I see. Let's see if we can win him over by promising to bring back anyone he may have lost in the last few years. According to the final report, the Raikage has asked us to attend a meeting with the Kages other than the Hokage to decide the fate of the lands. The meeting will take place in a week in the Land of Iron, and the Samurai General Mifune will be in charge. Oh, I see. It would be rude to refuse this offer, but I have a feeling that Konoha won't take this lightly and will try to stop the meeting. Naruto shook his head and asked, what do you want me to do about it? Demiurge said to Naruto, tell Zeshi I have a task for her, and if she does it and meets all the goals, I'll give her what she wants. Demiurge grinned and left the room, letting Minato grab Naruto and motion for him to follow him. When he walked into the dark room for sealing, he asked, are you prepared? Yes, it's time for the Kyuubi to be whole again, Minato said. As Naruto cast his spell, Minato did the hand signs. In an instant, a dark portal opened, and a dark red aura came out of it and ran straight at Minato. Well? The plan worked, Naruto said with a smile. Good, then you're ready for stage 2, which is to help me bring Uzu back while serving as my advisor at the Kage Summit, Minato said with a smile. I would be happy to. Konoha. Danzo was so angry that he was yelling at the table. From what his agents have told him recently, it sounds like Jiraiya is dead and that other countries are starting to work together against Konoha. They say that what they did was bad for the world and that they were a real threat to society as a whole. He laughed at this because Konoha was the first village and gave all the other villages their tailed beasts, so they should pay homage to Konoha or give back their weapons. But from what he heard, Kumo has two that obey the new ruler of Lighting A after his successful coup. Kiri is missing both of theirs but is being protected by the other nations. Iwa's surprisingly working with everyone at this point and looking for peaceful solutions, and Suna is working with someone named Ainz who is protecting them from their village. Tsunade said that the Kage's hidden weapon, called the Will of Fire, was also destroyed. This made him realize that the Kages were going to die if he didn't stop it. So, he got all of his root shinobi in one room and put Sai at the front of the line. Sai, you and your friends have a very important mission to protect the people of Konoha. Of course, my lord. What are we supposed to do? You must sneak into the land of iron and kill all the people who have gathered there without anyone finding out. Failure is not an option right now, do you understand? Yes, we succeed or we die. In fact, you should all go now. May the will of fire lead you all. Soon, the root left the room and went into the land, but what they didn't know was that someone else was already in the cave with them, just sighing at how things were going. With this last mission done, she would be free to go back to the tomb and relax. If she did well, her lord might even give her a gift of some sex or a baby. Narbarrel showed up in her maid outfit in front of Danzo, who asked her right away. Who are you in the hell? Hello, insect. My name is Narbarrel Gamma, and I'm here to kill you today. She quickly swung her blade around to deflect a kunai that was shot at her. Fu and Torun, two Ambu agents of Root, came out of the shadows. She let out a sigh when she saw them. Kill her, my loyal servants, and we'll find out how she works. Narbarrel teleported away, which scared the three of them, and they quickly spread out in the cave to look for her. Torun was the first one to go down, because she stabbed him in the back of the head. Then she came up behind Fu, where she hit the back of his head in that way. Fu's head turned a full circle. She teleported back to the main room and waited for him to come back, saying, "How weak this elite is." He quickly came up behind her and swung his hidden sword down at the back of her neck. But her staff stopped the striker by grabbing him and pushing him away. He moved across the ground and then shot wind blades at her. She just put out her hand, and soon an invisible wall came up, making the hits have no effect on him. In reality, the attacks only hit the barrier and then spread out, which made the old shinobi angry. You'll pay for this spoiled brat. Now see how powerful I really am. He showed her his eye and tried to use the Kotamatsumi on her, but she yawned. Is that all? A weak trick to get me to do what you say? This trick only works on fools who are too weak to resist, Danzo said as he took off the bandages and weights on his arm to show his deformed arm. Then I guess I'll have to force you to give in, he said. He shot out some wood to cover her, but she was gone again. This time, she shot out two magical lightning balls that tore through the tree. How in the hell is this even possible? She called him a simple bug, and said, "You are too weak to really challenge someone who was made by beings greater than gods to serve the supreme being. You dare think you have the right to rule this world? Please my lord, Lord Ainz has greater call for this because of his immense power and the fact that he has conquered several other worlds as well. Be a witness to the power he has given me. Great dragon with black light." Soon, a bolt of lightning ripped out of her hands and turned into a dragon with a black body and gold eyes. It crashed into Danzo and turned him into ashes. She turned to leave, but someone was shooting more wind blasts at her. She sighed, and a magical barrier stopped the blows. "I see you're still alive. I'm immortal, child, and nothing can stop me. You might as well give in to me if you want to avoid the worst possible fate," he said, smirking down at her. He was sure she was going to regret her foolishness, but the girl just gave him a smirk in return. "My master warned me about the Izanagi, a move that is supposed to show how to change the reality of the world. But in reality, it can only be done at the cost of your eyes, so that doesn't mean anything to me at this point. This just means I can try out new things with you and see how far I can push you before you die for good." With a wave of her hand, black chains appeared from magical circles and held him in place. Then she called forth a ball of F. "Let's see how many times you have to die before you don't come back," he said. Danzo glared at him. He was too close to his goal to fail now. The constant attacks from below the ground would cause the village to shake, but no one knew that Danzo was being killed slowly. Country of Iron. Naruto took his place at the head of the table, where the other Kages were also sitting. He used his human form to keep them from freaking out about his true form, and he would probably use that form from now on to greet humans. Now that all the Kages are here, we can start this meeting. Lord Raikage, you may start. The big man got up from his chair and grunted. As you all know, Konoha has changed since the time of Hiruzen, the third Hokage, and the fourth Hokage, and it's becoming more and more clear that they are falling into greater darkness. I'm here to propose that we all join an alliance to wipe out all those who dare to oppose the nature of our world and end the threat once and for all. That includes the Akatsuki. The group looked at each other, and Naruto was the first. I agree with the Raikage, but you all need to know that once this is over, you'll know who the rightful leader is, right? Yes, Inoki said. He didn't like it, but he couldn't argue when he saw what the man was doing and how it was making their system better. Who would fight someone who had a huge rock monster with the power of the Kyuubi and could bring the dead back to life at their side? But my question is, what will happen to the whole land of fire? Simple. I sent someone to convince the Fire Dayamo that if he stops helping Konoha and cuts off the money, I will let him rule those lands however he wants as long as he swears loyalty to me. After being quiet for a while, Mei asked. What about Kiri? We can't fight in a war right now, and we don't see any reason to deal with Konoha right now, Ainz said with a smile. Really? How about I tell you right now that Konoha has sent a few of their Anbu here to kill all of us and make moves for our countries right now? Mei was shocked, and the other Kages and Mifune were furious. What? Yes, Lady Mizukage, I have proof that this is happening right now, but don't worry, I have a plan for this, he said, pulling out a special orb that could show everyone what was going on. Showing the outside of the building and that root shinobi were dead and bleeding all over the snow, and that no one could stop the person who killed them all. As it turned out, Zeshi was the one cutting down people so quickly that it seemed easy at this point. As you can see, Konoha is so afraid of us just meeting in private that they would plan for all of us to die, no matter what. What do you think now? Mei was angry about this turn of events and said, it's not fair. Fine, I'll join you, but I need a promise that you'll give me back the sword of Zabuza. Naruto shook his head. I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I owe the man so much for showing me the way I walk today and being a teacher to me that I can't let his weapon fall into the wrong hands. So I gave it to Koikutis, who is the strongest warrior in my army when it comes to weapons, because I don't want to dishonor the man's memory. Okay, but could you at least let us take Kisami's sword? Ainz thought about it for a minute and decided that keeping the sword of someone who was important to him in ways that Kakashi wasn't was a fair trade. As you know, Lord Ainz, I agree with you on this, Gaara said with a smile. Soon, everyone else agreed, too, because Konoha's attack on Wave had killed many of Mifune's men, and he wanted revenge. Zeshi finally came back into the room with Sai's head in her hands. She asked if that was enough, and he agreed, saying that they should send the bodies back as a sign that the war has begun. Danzo. He was barely breathing because the woman, or monster, had done everything she could to make him die slowly. He had been tortured, electrocuted, fried, turned into small pools of blood, and burned alive with different things. He was surprised that he had lasted this long, but she said she wanted to try out some new moves on him, and most of her attacks didn't even seem to hurt her. Now that he was on his last life, the chains were holding him down again, and she stood over him with a smile on her face. You lose, fool, but before I leave, I'm taking this with me. She reached down and took his Sharingan out of his head and put it in a special container with green liquid. Now we have everything we need to find that Itachi person Lord Ainz talked about. Itachi, that man is just a tool for the village. He will never work with people who want to destroy the village or his brother, she said with a smile. Oh, he will when we make him an offer he can't refuse. But that's not here or now, so please die. Without warning, she turned him to ash with one more blast of lightning and smiled. I was right, insects can smell good if they are cooked right. Better get some for Intoma and see what she thinks of this. She turned red at the sight and then left the eyes next to his throne and went away to get away from it. Demiurge smiled in another room of the building. I'm glad you are joining us. Sure, if this means I can make up for what I did, then so be it. Even if it costs you the thing you fought to protect? The person laughed. They have changed from who they could be, and now they have nothing to do with me or my dream. I see. Well, my lord will be happy, and I hope that this medical procedure won't stop you from joining us in the invasion. Demiurge smiled and told the man, of course not, I'll be stronger than ever now. The man sat down and waited to see what the future held for him. Invasion. The odds against Konoha were impossible, and Tsunade knew it. The armies of Kiri, Kumo, Iwa, Suna, Iron, and finally Uzu were waiting outside their gates. From there, she could see some people she knew in Uzu, like her grandfather, grandmother, and grand-uncle. Madara Uchiha, who had black hair and red samurai armor, was also there. Next to them were Minato Namikaze, Kushina Uzumaki, and a few other people who didn't look human or normal in any way. Today, Konoha falls, Naruto said. He put out his hands and cast a super tier spell right away. Defense null absolution. Everyone in the village saw their village protecting seals fall, and soon the army came rushing at them with great force. The shinobi were getting the civilians to the inner part of the city so they could get to the bunkers and hidden cellars while the rest of the people were setting up their defenses to fight the enemy that was coming their way. But before they could close the door for good, a woman with a black axe and a glint in her eyes broke it down. Today, you stupid lower life forms will pay for your disrespect. Albedo started running and easily killed her enemies. She even used her magic to send those who were shooting at her from far away from her. Shaltir was already in the village and on her way to the hospital, where she was told to kill the doctors and nurses and drink as much blood as she could to get stronger. When she walked into the building, the workers froze in fear, but some of them grabbed weapons and charged her. She called her brides, and they quickly started tearing through the doctors and nurses in the building as she said, "How disappointing. Leave the sick, the hurt, and the children alone. There's no point in killing innocent people who are already sick or dying." She felt something hit her in the neck, and when she pulled it out, she saw that it was a poison senbon. A woman with black hair stood at the door with her launcher ready. "Who do you seem to be?" "I'm a student of Tsunade Senju, and I won't let you keep wreaking havoc in this healing building." "Ah, so you're the doll he was talking about. It's sad that you're loyal to someone that not even demons would join forces with." Shizune got angry when her teacher was called a doll. "She is more important than your leader," Shaltir said with a smile. The woman shot another senbon, but this time she let it hit her in the heart and pulled it out. "You should know I'm immune to poisons thanks to my already half-dead body. But I'm sure you have something else up your sleeve other than..." She stopped Shizune's punch with her hand and smiled, "Too easy, dear." "Oh well, I was having too high hopes for a student of that wench, but then again she was a frail human." Shaltir quickly plunged her hand into her chest and ripped out her heart before laughing at her dying on the ground. "That was easy, you stupid person. Have fun in hell with your teacher." Back at the gate, Ainz was facing Kakashi and Tenzo, who both gave him dirty looks for coming into their home. Kakashi's eye was shown, and Tenzo was ready to use his wood release right away. "Monster, you fall today." "Senpai is right, you won't win as long as we have strong wills of fire," Ainz said. "Oh, really? That's sad, fool, because your so-called will is about to die." He saw the man finish the wood release, and then a large set of logs aimed at his head and chest. But with one finger, he shot a ball of fire that easily burned up the attack. "I'm sorry, but I don't have time to deal with you two, so I'll let him do it." Out of nowhere, a man appeared in a flash of yellow. It was Kakashi's old teacher, which shocked him. "Would you take care of this?" "Naruto is, of course." Both men figured out that Lord Ainz was the demon and tried to catch him, but Minato stood in their way. "Sensei, move. We have to get rid of the demon. That demon is my son, Kakashi, and I'm very upset with you. You betrayed me in Kushina, and right now you're betraying your father again." "Sensei, that's not your son. He was never," he started, but Minato punched him in the stomach and knocked him off his feet. He then kicked him in the side of the head. Then he suddenly appeared in front of Tenzo, cut his throat, and left him bleeding there. When he looked back at his former student, he begged for forgiveness, but he didn't give in. Instead, he sat on his chest and beat his face into the ground. From there, he took out his eye and taped it shut while cutting the throat of his former student. "Die like the coward you were, Kakashi," he said, and then he ran away, leaving the son of the White Fang to bleed to death. Asuma was helping Kurenai fight with everything he had, but he was also falling behind. They didn't have much trouble with the enemy shinobi, but soon they ran into two maids who beat them badly. One was fighting like an insect, while the other had green bracers on her hands and just punched them. She looked at Kurenai and asked, "Yuri, can I eat this one?" She frowned at the idea of this monster eating her while she was protecting her daughter from these people. "Yes, Lord Ainz said you can only eat one person, do you understand?" She quickly dashed at her with an invisible sword, and Kurenai tried to trick her with a powerful illusion, but it didn't work. Soon, the sword went through her stomach, and she coughed up blood as she saw the girl in the blank mask smile at her. "Don't worry, your body will be good for me, and I promise your daughter will never know you were eaten," she said as she cracked the other woman's neck with her other hand. Asuma yelled when the person he loved died, and he quickly shot an ash pile at her, but she was gone with the body in an instant. "I'll kill you," he said as he charged at her with his trench knives as she dug into his wife. "I'm not your only enemy," she said. He felt a blow to his head, and then a hole opened up in his stomach, and he tried to keep his stomach contents from coming out. "How sad that a moment of anger cost you so much today," she said. With one quick blow of her hand, she killed him, and when she walked into the house, she saw a baby sleeping in a cot and smiled at the cute thing. Since she spent time with Ainz, she and the other girls have grown to care about human children. CZ liked cute little furry animals, so she kept a cat and a puppy as pets. She also kept their babies and their mothers. "Aren't you a cute little thing?" she said as she picked up the baby who was crying her eyes out because she missed her mother's warmth. It looked at her and reached for her face, and she smiled. Maybe she should have one for herself. She might even ask her lord if she could keep this one for herself so she could practice. Even if the other girls say she doesn't have a heart, that in the child made her feel something. Sasuke Uchiha was fighting off the shinobi who had the nerve to come into the Uchiha district, but he was losing until he noticed that they were moving away. He laughed. Of course he was a Uchiha, and they knew it was pointless to fight him, so they would go round up their strongest warriors only to lose to his power. But he felt someone behind him, someone he had known since he was a child. Itachi was standing there, but instead of his Akatsuki robes, he had on robes with the mark of the Ainz fool on them. "It's been a while, Sasuke. Don't be a fool, little brother. Are you saying that I'm strong?" Itachi laughed. "Not at all, especially since I called you that because I thought of you as my brother, but now I can't see the child I used to know. Please don't say I was weak, because I'm strong now and will rule the Leaf." "Even if they were part of the reason our clan fell?" "What do you mean?" "Simple, the Hokage and the elders told me to kill everyone in our clan so that you could live. Unfortunately, I made the biggest mistake by doing this because I should have killed the ones in charge of the coup." "Our family was planning a coup?" "Well, that makes sense, because we were supposed to rule this village. Everyone should be bowing down to our power." Then someone came between them and laughed at the boy's claim. Sasuke was shocked to see the leader of the Uchiha clan standing in front of him again. That sounds like my stupid brother, but then again, he was stupid to try to get stronger through his darkness. "Now, Itachi, it's time for you to do your part." "Yes, Lord Madara." Sasuke yelled, "What is he talking about?" "My simple brother Lord Ainz not only cured me of a disease I had, but he also made me a deal. If I killed him, the children of our clan and innocent people would come back to life if I killed him." "HMPH, you'd kill me for those weaklings." "I think it's time I get back at you for what you did to our parents," Itachi said as he shook his head. In a flash, he and Sasuke fought, and the head of the clan just stood there and watched it happen. After hours of fighting, most of the village was in ruins and most shops were destroyed. Most shinobi had been caught, and those who were still fighting the enemy were barely hanging on. Guy thought he was going toe-to-toe with Ainz all the way to the gate of death, but he was really just fighting an illusion. He died without ever hurting Ainz, so he didn't have to worry about that. Lee was angry that his teacher had died, so he tried to fight Zeshi. However, Zeshi cut off Lee's legs and left him bleeding on the ground while he wiped the dust off his robe with his jumpsuit. The combined forces destroyed the clans, and those who didn't die were taken prisoner and put in cells to wait for what would happen to them next. They were being watched by lizard men, and Gargantuan was standing next to them, ready to blow up the village if he had to. The rest of the forces gathered around the shelters and pulled the children and adults out. They put the children and adults in separate places and had their mages slowly erase their memories of their parents. Ainz was looking at Tsunade, who was the last line of defense between him and his winner. "Today you die, you monster." "Not at all, but you've always been a senile old B***tch, he said. She narrowed her eyes because she knew the insult. "Naruto, get behind me." "I told you, Tsunade, that nothing can stop me from getting my revenge, so get ready to pay for your wrongdoings. You first. She ran at him and put her heel down on his head, but he just smiled and ran up next to her and kicked her into some buildings. She stood up on wobbly legs, but he quickly appeared behind her and cut her spine, making her unable to move or sigh. I had so many dreams about you dying, but in the end and at the same time, it's not the same. Perhaps that's our minds telling us we were right, Naruto laughed. I doubt it, but that might be because your death doesn't matter to me, and all I care about is making this world what it needs to be, he said. He started to walk away, but before Tsunade could yell at him, she saw Kushina standing there with her grandfather, grandmother, and great-granduncle. That monster brought you all back from the dead. Yes, but the difference is that we know why he did it. You betrayed me, Tsunade. You betrayed us all, the teachings of the Senju and the teachings of the Uzumaki, and for what? Kushina kicked her in the face when she said, I was tired of giving and giving when all the village did was take from me, so why should I care for a child who wasn't mine? This child was my son and your godson. You and Jiraiya spit on my husband and me. This is the last time I will hear this from you or him, so as of right now you are no longer my teacher. Kushina turned away as Mito and the others said, you are no longer my teacher. You're not our child or grandchild. From now on, you'll never take our name or title again. Goodbye, Tsunade. May you find the peace you were looking for in the next life. Mito stabbed her with Hashirama's sword and wiped off the blood with a cloth before giving it back to him. They went back to the entrance to wait for Ainz and his orders. In the Hyuga district, where so many clan members and elders died, the building was badly damaged. Hiyashi and Hinata were the only ones who could still fight against the force. Neji was already out of the game because he had been hurt earlier. Hello, father and sister, Hanabi said. Since her transformation, she had grown darker skin, horns on her head, and gold eyes with slits in them. She laughed, Hanabi, how dare you betray our clan? Sorry, Dad, being a demon was much more interesting than being a boring potential marriage tool, she said. And this power seemed more interesting than having to listen to people who never stop talking. Hinata glared at him and said, you will die for this girl. Hanabi gestured for them to come at her, but as soon as they got close enough, she pierced them with her strikes, leaving them bleeding on the ground. Hanabi sighed, I guess I was too strong for both of you, but that was never the case. She wrapped 2 colors around their necks, cutting off their chakra and stopping them from bleeding out. Dying is not yet your price. In less than 10 hours, the leaf was reduced to smoking ruins, and all the people who were still alive soon gathered at the village entrance to watch Gargantua fire his red beam at the great village and wipe it off the map. Naruto looked at the civilians and saw that they were in groups away from the shinobi, so he said, now it's time to figure out what to do with the rest of you. Feed them to our friend at the tomb. After all, he's been such a good boy that he deserves a feast. The lizard men bowed and quickly began leading the people to the land of Uzu, where they would be killed by a giant cockroach monster. He then turned to the shinobi and told him, half will go to the other villages for their own use, and the rest will come with us. I'm sure we can find a use for them in some way. Naruto then saw them being dragged away while he turned to each village and talked about their rewards for helping in the war. Kumo, your prize is that the main branch of the Hyuga clan will become slaves for your programs, while the branch family's loyalty to the main branch will be tested. Agreed. Kiri, you get the Yamanaka clan and the Nara clan, the king said. Alright. The Akamichi clan is given to Suna. That's fine with us, he said as he turned to Iwa. You can have the Aburame clan, and on top of that, the head of Sasuke Uchiha, since we're done with him. He showed the head of an eyeless Sasuke Uchiha, writhing in pain from his death. Inoki laughed at this, because this jerk had the nerve to rape his granddaughter and then tell her she should be thankful. This will look good on his wall, he thought. Thank you, Lord Ainz, the man said. Ainz nodded his head and then yelled. Today is a great day because the shinobi era is over and the era of the Ainz has begun. Praise Lord Ainz. People started cheering and chanting, and Ainz smiled when he saw Albedo coming up to him and whispering something that made him freeze. I'm pregnant. After 6 years. Ainz liked the peace he had found in the fact that another one of his children was born today. He thought about everything that happened at the end of the war as he watched from his throne room. Going back to when he got Nagato and Konan to join them and killed the rest of the Akatsuki. From there, he became the overlord of this world and sat on a throne that was higher than any other being in the universe. Once he was sure that all the laws and rules were in place, he turned his attention to the tomb and what was going on there. For one thing, the women in his life took away any physical strength he might have had to have the kids they wanted. At the same time, the group was working hard to make sure that the people who were closest to him in life were given immortality like him and the other people in the tomb. This way, they would never have to worry about dying unless they wanted to. In the tomb, his first wife, Albedo, gave birth to their first child, Kiimi, who looked just like her mother. She was starting to get horns on her head, had gold eyes with slits, and the same skin color as her mother. However, the most important thing was that she got whisker marks on her face, which showed a genetic trait. The next year, Shaltier had twin girls who looked just like her, except that one had red eyes and the other had blue eyes. All of the maids had at least 1 or 2 children, but Beta was the only one who was expecting her third child and wanted a daughter to treat like a princess. After all, she gave Ainz 2 sons who looked like him, but one of them had 1 gold eye and 1 blue eye when he was born. The most surprising thing, though, was that Alpha, the headmaid, had taken Kurenai and Asuma's daughter as her own. She treated her like her own daughter and loved her back. At the same time, the girl dreamed of working for Ainz after hearing and seeing how great he was for so many years. Alpha told her that she would be one of the maids of the tomb in the future, but if she ever wanted something else, she could have it. When she heard this, she smiled and agreed. She also told her that she was looking forward to what would happen next. Most people were surprised when Hanabi ended up liking Demiurge, but he did too, even though he didn't want to at first. The last time he heard, they had 2 children together. They had a daughter and a son, but the son was more like his mother than his father, and they were trying for a third child. Even though it was close, Sebas and Taweri did end up living together and having a daughter. But he had never seen his old friend cry, and when he held his daughter, he cried tears of happiness at being a dad. Minato and Kushina stayed in the tomb with their son. Even though everyone else in the tomb called him Ainz, Minato and Kushina still called him Naruto. He didn't use his skeleton form very often, so they got to see more and more of their human-looking son, even though he didn't feel like a human anymore. He was surprised to hear that he had a brand new baby sister who was only about 2 years old. Like her mother, she had long blonde hair, blue eyes, and a peach-colored skin tone. When she was given to him, he enjoyed the moment because she always clung to him. Albedo and the others thought she was a cute girl who would grow up to be strong like her brother, their husband. He even heard that Hashirama and Mito had a couple of their own kids and that Madara had settled down with Mei and had a small family of her own, which she wanted to grow. The most surprising thing was probably when they got a wedding invitation from Tobirama. He had met a beautiful woman from Kumo and moved in with her. They had triplets, which was his first set of children. He did say that his wife was in a lot of pain, and the fact that he had a broken hand showed that he was right. So when she wanted another child, he got so scared that he passed out. Things moved at different speeds in the rest of the world, though. One was that he heard that Kumo now had their own Hyuga clan and that they were training them and teaching them the way of love and peace without ever using seals on them. Ainz made it clear that he didn't want that mess to happen again, and the Raikage agreed with him. He heard that the oldest child, who was about 6 years old, was Hinata's son and that he didn't want to see his mother because of what she did to Lord Ainz, whom he looked up to as his hero. Over time, he got more siblings and relatives from these other family members because they were all from Hiashi or some other main clan members who had survived. Iwa was moving away from its old ways and into the future because his granddaughter was leading the way. Other villages followed suit, and soon the whole world was changing from living as shinobi to living as one kingdom united under the tomb. Back in the throne room, Naruto saw his wife Albedo smiling and laughing at her daughter, who she was bouncing around in her arms while she complained about being carried. As he got closer to the throne, though, he saw his little sister crawling on the floor. Since his parents were busy, he asked them to bring her to him, and he agreed to take care of her because of that. But soon, he was left waiting with bated breath when he saw her stand on her own 2 legs for the first time. She wobbled as she took her first steps, and he took out a crystal to remember the moment. His wife went crazy over this. "Come on, Lady Natsumi. You can do it, you're so close." "Mama, does she mature quickly?" "She's my sweetheart, and this is something your dad will always remember." Soon, he got on his knees and grabbed his sister when he was close enough to hug her. He then started throwing her in the air and cheering for her. Albedo brought their daughter to him, and he put her on his other lap. But the girl quickly picked up her aunt and put her on her lap. From there, Naruto had his daughter and sister on his lap, while his daughter held her younger aunt. Albedo took pictures quickly for the future. But then the door opened, and Sakura walked in. She looked sad because all the women in the group and some of the people running around the tomb had tortured her for 6 years. The most important thing is that Ainz was put under a spell that kept her from dying. Instead, she was tortured for hours and days, never having to eat or drink but always wanting to. At this point, he had let her suffer for a long time and let her think that Sasuke would save her from this hellhole soon. That is, until he showed her his head, which broke her spirit, and then sent it back to Iwa. Sakura Haruno, you are the last thing left of Konoha. You are the last piece of a bad memory that needs to be erased. Do you want to say anything before you disappear? She made a light grunt. I hope you evil people get what you deserve. This made Ainz laugh, and with one swipe of his hand, she died right there and turned into dust. Sorry, Haruno, but Death and I are good friends, so I'm not too worried. He smiled at everyone in the room and said, come on, let's go check on Beta and see if the girls want to have another picnic on the 6th floor and let the kids play with Hamski. Great, my husband. Now we can talk about getting our sweet girl a brother or sister. Naruto put his arm around his succubus's waist. My love, if you asked, I would give you and the other girls 100 children. When they kissed, the twins threw up, but he didn't care. He was back in charge and ready to conquer again, but for now he was going to spend time with his family.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.